Those 3 words left Mrs. Stixx in tears. Broken. She wanted to quit the game, a game that she had dedicated weeks to. She wanted to quit social media, she wanted to distance herself entirely from everyone online because of how hurt she was. Sure, she knew that there were some people out there that hated me, not her, because I made a claim that they disagreed with about a game that they happen to like, because they didn't win a giveaway, because they don't like some of the titles that I use. Yet never had she felt a sting like that in all of her years in gaming. This forced her to change her name in game and henceforth go incognito whenever we play or start a new MMO, to avoid these kinds of people, these kinds of things from happening. But we're gonna go ahead and talk about that in a little more detail in just a minute. So both Mrs. Stixx and I took part in every single test phase for Swords of Legends Online. I genuinely thought the game had a lot of potential. Gameforge promised that the game would be free of pay to win, that the cash shop would be fair, that players wouldn't be capable of purchasing an advantage over one another. And you know what? They actually held true to that. Swords of Legends Online ended up being exactly what they promised all of us. Yet, at the same time, population numbers for the game have been in a very steady state of decline ever since it launched. And let me stop you guys there. Yes, that is the ultimate fate of 99% of MMOs. There's no denying that. But as of right now, there are 670 concurrent players online via Steam, with a 24-hour peak of 1,450. Granted, this is specifically pertaining to the Steam player base. Some players play through the Gameforge launcher as well. Yet, even if we say that there is an equal split between the two platforms, this is proof that Solo, in the span of a mere 3 months, has lost 93% of its active daily players. 93%. You might be wondering why that is, especially given that players should have theoretically been flocking to the game in droves, right? Well, on the one hand, I noticed that unlike companies like Amazon with New World, or Square with Final Fantasy XIV, or heck, even Nexon with Mabinogi and V4, Gameforge never really marketed their game to their influencers' respective communities. The number of high-profile MMO YouTubers and even streamers seem to, for the most part, completely ignore Solo. Sure, Mrs. Stixx and I did a couple videos on the game, but that was because Mrs. Stixx and I were genuinely impressed with certain aspects of it and were enjoying our time within it. Admittedly, Mrs. Stixx was enjoying her time in it much more than I was, but that's another story for another time. But after the first, 48 hours, the game had all but been forgotten. A new, decent quality MMO release forgotten faster than it had actually released. And since then, Gameforge have done absolutely nothing to attempt to market the game, aiding in its, well, rather rapid decline. But even without regular marketing, without paying to advertise it, if a game is good, positive word of mouth would have spread, and that alone would have triggered a chain influx of new players joining. Yet it didn't. Nobody talked about it. Nobody encouraged other players to join. And the MMO has sunk into literal obscurity in just 3 months. One of the reasons that I notice people don't seem to recommend the game is partly due to the community. Yes, there are plenty of toxic communities out there. Communities like League, like WoW. Online communities are some of the worst. They bring out these absolutely horrible sides of people that they wouldn't dare show face to face. But anonymity all but encourages this type of behavior, and let me go ahead here and give you 2 examples of this. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen frequently enough to warrant the use of these as examples. Now, Mrs. Stixx regularly raids in solo. I don't. She does the most competitive type of content that she can. Not just in Swords of Legends, even in Final Fantasy XIV. Pretty much in every MMO that she mains, she will tackle the most competitive content that she can. Yet, when new content is released, specifically pertaining to Swords of Legends here, heck, even content that is multiple weeks old, has players joining, wiping, and then just proceeding to instantly leave. Now, this isn't something that is exclusive to Swords of Legends, sure, but in a game that has less than 1,000 people playing at any given moment, it's going to have an impact. Now, these rage quitters scold everyone else. They project the blame onto everyone else, fabricating drama out of their own inept abilities, and then they proceed to just quit. This forces players to just sit there waiting for other new players to join, or worst case scenario, has players begin blaming one another, which subsequently results in the group disbanding. This happens all too often. Instead of the community working through what they did wrong, instead of explaining a mechanic that they're failing to correctly do, something that I've seen done in games like Final Fantasy XIV, something like in Guild Wars 2, even the Elder Scrolls Online, these people prefer to just lash out. And I cannot begin to express how much of a common occurrence this is, and it just makes the entire experience something that you end up wanting to avoid. It's either filled with drama or it's just a waste of time. Granted, this is much easier to avoid if you have something like an active guild or a group of friends, but let's be real, with 1,000, maybe 2,000 players online, that is unlikely. The second example is what happened to MRSSTIX during the first month of the game's life. As I noted, we were avid fans of the game. We did, like 3-4 videos on solo within its first month. Each video went on to garner 50,000 to 100,000 views each. So the community knew who we were. They knew our names in game. MRSSTIX was looking to run a dungeon one day when someone recognized her. They mentioned how they watch our videos and were ecstatic to get to meet and play with her in game. MRSSTIX was happy to play with someone that enjoyed her solo videos, so she responded. She went ahead and she confirmed that she was indeed who the player thought that she was, and that's when someone interjected and began to unabashedly attack her, criticizing her, her videos, the channel, our streams, me, everything they possibly could in an attempt to bring her down. Naturally, with Solo's community being the toxic cesspool that it is, other players joined in and began to barrage her with personal attacks, not only in the public chat but also through DMs, with, once again, people DMing her things like what I mentioned at the beginning of all of this. Never had I experienced such a vile show of humanity, if you can even call it that, before in my life. MRSSTIX has done nothing on the channel but push out informative, entertaining, well-written content. She does maybe 2 or 3 videos per year on topics that she genuinely feels passionately about, and they had the audacity to attack her? Regardless, she went on to report the players that were sending those messages. So did other players in game that were attempting to defend her. Some of these players actually ended up being mass reported, and weeks later, Gameforge still had done absolutely nothing to them. The players were allowed to send those types of messages in-game without repercussions, and that is one of the main examples of toxicity in the game, toxicity within the community. And that further leads me to another reason that this has been failing as severely as it has been. Gameforge, their handling of the game, their support, and their communication, or a lack thereof. I'm not sure why, but they seem so hands-off with this game. Sure, content has been flowing, kudos to them for that, but announcements for content are always abrupt. They're just so sudden. They don't reply to support tickets. They don't even enforce bans, which we saw firsthand. I was shocked and even slightly appalled at how poorly they have handled this game's launch and continued development. And with their recent announcement that Kingdom Under Fire 2 is shutting down, their recent loss of Soul Worker, which I might add has been doing significantly better without them, I dare say that it's only a matter of time until this game bites the dust in much the same way. But this is why I gave up on Swords of Legends Online. I have plans on doing a follow-up, Is Swords of Legends Online Worth Playing in 2021 video sometime soon, from MRSSTIX's perspective in game, as she has been obtaining some footage via our streams. But I would never go back to solo. And while she is, for some reason, still actively playing, she has since changed her name once more after obtaining the footage that we needed to avoid this type of situation from happening again in the future. And honestly, we haven't had this happen in any other MMO that we play. Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV, The Elder Scrolls Online, even Black Desert Online. And Black Desert Online is pretty toxic, guys. Just Swords of Legends. And we have been playing, literally, all the aforementioned titles for years.
Someday soon, I'm gonna make it.